of reproductive age and the people who love them all around the United States are probably collectively sighing a breath of relief right now because of how incredibly scary it is to think that you could be in this situation where you need emergency medical care. You're facing the loss of an organ, your fertility is at stake, and you're literally looking at potentially dying and having physicians have to violate their Hippocratic oath and say, I can't treat you because I'm afraid of going to jail for it. So I think for women all across America, this is a victory if that is, in fact, an accurate assessment, what was on the website. It does give me some pause that now this is the second time in a few years that we're seeing something accidentally posted or distributed, and it makes me wonder what's going on at the United States Supreme Court right now. But, we've seen this exponential rise in both maternal mortality as well as infant mortality ever since the Dobbs decision came out. And hopefully, if this is a real ruling from the court, it will do something to curtail the number of deaths we've seen.
So are you encouraged then to see what is apparently forthcoming from the court, and I wonder if you think they should just come out with it today, following the ruling on mifepristone, maintaining access to the abortion pill, or are you discouraged that both, to Kaylee's point earlier, have been essentially rulings on standing?
Yeah, I have a theory about that.
Yeah?
I think that these are not cases that the high court wanted to hear. I think they were sort of forced upon them by incredibly conservative circuit courts of appeal that really have forced the hand now of the United States Supreme Court. And I've seen decision after decision where I don't think that the justices wanted to rule on this particular case at this particular time. I don't think that the majority of justices, and by that I mean 6 of them on the Supreme Court, have an interest in restricting Second Amendment related rights. They don't like, in general, the gun safety laws. They don't like the use of mifepristone, but these are poor vehicles that have come to them to allow them to further restrict abortion rights or gun safety measures or things of that nature. So what we're seeing is they are finding other ways to dispose of these cases without having to rule on the merits, and that allows them the freedom in the future to say, well, we're not contradicting a prior decision. We're not overturning any sort of precedent. We got rid of that case on standing, and that's what they're continuing to do.
But should the court not have expected these kind of challenges to ultimately reach them after they ruled in Dobbs to essentially overturn the constitutional right to an abortion? It was only inevitable that certain state laws or access to certain procedures or medications were going to have to be called into question just because of the uncertainty that ruling created, no?
You would think so, and you would think that that would be their thought as well, but I think some of these cases are just so controversial and so antithetical to public opinion. And you already have the Supreme Court in a place where, we've never had such low confidence or respect for this court. They've been mired in ethical scandals. And every time they issue a ruling that is deeply unpopular with the public, they risk having their integrity impugned more and more. And so I think that might be part of the calculus with some of these rulings as well. And again, because these are cases that are being, essentially tossed on standing or improvidently granted or something of that nature, it does still leave room for future rulings where they can still continue to chip away at reproductive rights or the rights of people to have, gun safety laws or other things that are, frankly, very popular in America.
Let's talk about some more future rulings, because the next couple of days are going to be awfully important as we spend time with Michigan's Attorney General Dana Nessel. This year, you charged 16 people for falsely claiming to be electors for Donald Trump in the 2020 election. We're expecting a ruling on some of the charges leveled against January 6 rioters, if we can call them that. The idea of obstruction, which brings us back to the Enron case, whether this is the same thing as hiding paperwork when we talk about obstructing, in this case, an official proceeding? What's the court going to say about this?
Well, it's hard to know what they're going to say, but it's clear what the January 6 rioters were trying to do. And it's clear, I think, as well, what the former president of the United States was trying to encourage them to do. We have seen, obviously, through the January 6 committee testimony and, of course, the discovery in cases all over the United States, well, I should say swing states, especially, including my own, that there was a concerted effort to undermine the election, and to do so by making sure that Congress could not meet and could not properly convene to vote.
Is this law broad enough to apply, though, in this case?
I guess we're going to have to see what the court says, but I think that it has to be, and it should be, and we certainly have to make certain that we have laws in place that specifically indicate, right, that it is improper and it is illegal to disrupt that type of a proceeding, because if so, I mean, if we're not going to say that what they did was illegal in this set of circumstances, how are we going to continue to administer elections? Because this is part of the election process.
Well, and of course, we're still relitigating what happened during the election process of 2020, both in the immediate aftermath, what was happening at polling centers with fake electors, for example, or even on January 6th of 2021. How concerned are you, specifically in the state of Michigan, which, as you say, is going to be a critical swing state that could be one of the deciding factors in the outcome about election security in this cycle in 2024?
Yeah, one of my biggest concerns, and I think this involves all of the many Trump cases that have been pending, many of them, of course, put on hold because of the Trump immunity case. And this goes to many of the cases that were charged in Michigan as well. And there are a lot. It's not just the false slate of electors case. We have a variety of cases that are relevant to efforts to try to overturn the election in Michigan in 2020. Those cases have moved forward at just a snail's pace. And as a result, here we are, 4 years later, we're going into yet another presidential election. And we have not seen the cases from 2020 disposed yet. The courts have, really, I mean, there's adjournment after adjournment on these cases. It's taking a very long time for courts to issue rulings. And I'm worried about the impact it's going to have, because one of the things about enforcing the law is ensuring deterrence against people continuing to, engage in that kind of illegal activity, which, again, is so detrimental to our democracy as a whole. So I am worried with the Trump cases not moving forward before the election, with a lot of our state cases not going to be completely disposed of before the election, that it'd be sending the wrong message to people, that the people weren't held accountable when they did this 4 years ago. So maybe you won't be held accountable if you engage in the same activity now in 2024. We just can't have that.